Hudson, what's up, man?
What's up, man?
Good to have you back on. It's been a while.
I know it's been a while, but I appreciate you having me back on.
Yes, of course. Like you said, right before we started, how yesterday in the world of combat sports and MMA, it was kind of like a bombshell because there's been so much that was announced within. I haven't done an MMA episode in like probably 3-4 weeks because I did one last week with Pothole Paradise, and I haven't had the chance to talk combat sports in a while. So, and Jack was unavailable because he's at work, I think. So now you get to, which is good. I guess I wanted to. I guess we can just start from what all has been announced recently. I guess the big thing that was announced yesterday. So today is the 20th. This will probably be out next week. Mm-hmm. But today's the 20th. So as far as yesterday, the 19th goes, we got word of the UFC 294 card in Abu Dhabi. Main event, Islam versus Charles, rematch for the lightweight championship. And one thing that was interesting about them announcing that is that I wasn't 100% sure if that fight was actually going to happen, because there's been talks of Leon coming in there, and I don't know. There was just a lot of things going on and Charles said that he wasn't ready, and now he is ready. Yeah. So I just want to get your take on this fight.
Yeah, it's the rematch.
Move just a little closer.
Got you.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, it's the rematch. It's the fight everybody wanted. It's the most important fight that the lightweight division has right now. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of talk. Islam was kind of chomping at the bit, trying to get Leon Edwards to fight him in Abu Dhabi, mm-hmm. to maybe unify welterweight and lightweight, but the right matchup got made. So,
yeah, I think I speak for most MMA fans when the last thing we kind of wanted to see was Islam versus Leon Edwards. It's a fun and entertaining fight. But I was telling my brother this. I said I don't know how well that fight could sell. Because Islam's obviously a dominant champion, Leon's a dominant champion, but are that many people interested in a fight like that? I feel like I would be, but I would much, much, much rather have this rematch than have that fight with Leon. Now, definitely that fight with Leon is definitely possible down the road, depending on the outcome of this fight in October.
I agree.
But it's really, really exciting because we haven't seen Islam since that first fight, I think, right?
Since Volkanovski was...
Oh, Volk. Yeah, I'm sorry. Volk was back in... That wasn't even that long ago. That was back in, February? Something like that?
Yeah, I think in January.
Yeah, something like that. That was the last time we saw Islam was against Volk. And we know he's been training, and we know that he's been putting in the work, and it's really going to be exciting to see that fight. The co-main event, which is, I'm going to say, it's the people's main event, obviously. Two guys that both of us like very much. Oh, yeah. The return of Khamzat Chimaev versus Paulo Costa. Now, I want you to explain to them about, because obviously if you're a fan, you know that Paulo was supposed to fight in 2 weeks against what was the guy's name?
He was booked against Imavov, if I'm not.
Mm-hmm. The Contender Series guy.
Yes.
And now we found out this week that fight was pulled, mm-hmm. or Paulo was pulled, and there was no injury, there was no illness, so people were a little confused on why it got pulled. Mm-hmm. But obviously, I was doing a lot of research on it, and I said, well, I think they're finally going to make that fight between him and Paulo Costa. So, and you gave me a good explanation about how Dana's done this thing before, about how George Masvidal was supposed to fight. It was here. I'll just have you explain it.
Yeah. So they kind of. The UFC kind of does this every once in a while when they've got a big fight that they need to make a contenders match in a division. So in last year, Jorge Masvidal was supposed to fight Leon Edwards. You know, they had their whole thing back in the '02 when they fought backstage, and so they've got history, and they tried to make that fight, but they pulled Jorge from the fight even though he was healthy, so he could fight Colby Covington. Because that fight sells. People want to see that.
So bad.
And
so much.
I think they're kind of taking a similar route with this one, where they know people really like Paulo Costa, and it's kind of a big risk, because what if an unranked guy comes in and beats him?
Yeah, exactly.
Then what do you do?
Because he's not even ranked in middleweight. I think a lot of people don't understand that this is going to be a 185 fight. This fight is really, really important to the 185 division, because I don't know what Paulo's ranked in middleweight, but I know Khamzat was his fifth ranked middleweight. Yeah. So he was moving up in middleweight, and obviously the weight problems was the main reason why he moved up in the first place.
Right.
Because he was supposed to fight Nate, couldn't make the weight, so he ended up fighting Kevin Holland.
At the catchweight.
It was a catchweight fight, yeah. Kevin loves those catchweight fights.
Oh, yeah.
He loves them.
He'll take it.
Oh, yeah. And so there's been this long period where Khamzat hasn't fought, because for a time, he was one of the most active fighters on the roster. I mean, when he was fighting back in 2020, he fought in Abu Dhabi like back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, I think he had 2 fights in 2
weeks.
Yeah,
he won. He was the first fighter to win 3 fights in just 66 days. That's absurd. I mean, because nobody fights that much anymore.
No, most guys don't even get around to fighting 3 times a year.
Yeah,
much less
and
3 times.
I mean, we're getting Jon Jones twice. We're getting we'll get Izzy twice, because Izzy's going to fight in September.
Yes.
But yeah, most people don't even fight. I mean, once a year. That's probably about it. I mean, because we haven't seen Usman since Leon. I mean, and because there was also rumors of him fighting Khamzat, but that obviously didn't actually happen. Yeah. But I just wanted to kind of get on what you think about the whole Khamzat versus Paulo Costa fight.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. You said it's the most important fight in middleweight right now. It's the most important fight because if Costa wins, then he kind of reinserts himself back in line for Adesanya. And if Khamzat wins, he's basically
they might put him in front of the line.
Yeah, they might shoot him up to the front. And so it's going to be a clear number 1 contenders match. It's going to be fresh blood if Khamzat wins, and a new version of Costa if he wins.
And I think I speak for most fight fans when I say that we want Khamzat Chimaev versus Israel Adesanya.
100%.
I know a lot of people don't like him, which, if you know me very well, you know that he's my favorite fighter right now, active. Like, he's the best. He's the most entertaining for me. I could watch him all day. Matter of fact, I watched the Burns fight very recently, like 2 or 3 days ago. And I learned something about that fight about both of those guys, because Khamzat was an 11th ranked welterweight at that time. He was still kind of on the rise. And Gilbert Burns, yeah, and Burns was the 3rd ranked. Like, if he won that fight, he would have fought for a title.
100%.
And so and everyone's like, that fight made Khamzat look human. And I was like, well, yeah, it did, but you got to think about who he's also fighting against. Sure, Gilbert Burns has had a very, kind of average career, but that's Gilbert Burns, and he's been in there with some very high level guys. I mean, he walked George Masvidal all 3 rounds. I mean, made it look so easy.
Oh yeah.
Fought Bilal Muhammad. I mean, he's fought 3 times this year.
Yeah, Gilbert
Burns has been one of the most active fighters this year. He's fought 3 times. He's fought some very, very tough guys. Now, he did get bullied by Bilal Muhammad for 5 rounds.
He did.
And that's because Bilal Muhammad is a very, very good fighter, and I'm winning for his. I'm not a very big fan of him, but I'm ready for his. I'm ready for his next fight.
I agree.
And I think a lot of us are also waiting around, but 294 is going to be very, very exciting. Me and Hudson were talking last night, and what's the cheapest way for us to get to Abu Dhabi? I don't know, maybe charter a boat or helicopter in or something. We got to figure out a way to get there, because I want to see Khamzat fight live so bad.
Got to get to that island.
So another fight. I'm taking the turn over to boxing a little bit. So I guess it was about 2 weeks ago, we got the news that Francis Ngannou, the fight that most of us wanted against Tyson Fury, non-sanctioned by the WBC, so the belts won't be on the line, but it is going on the professional record. And with Tyson Fury, who's got an undefeated record, and you got Ngnnou, who's not a perfect record, but a very good one as far as MMA goes. I mean, I've never seen him box before, but if you know Francis Ngannou, you know the guy can throw down. You know the guy can punch.
He's got cement in his hands.
Mm-hmm. And that fight is that fight also in October?
Around then,
I think it's
towards the end of the year.
So this last leg of the year, we're getting a lot of pretty great fights.
Oh, awesome fights.
This fight between Tyson Fury and Ngannou has been a long process in getting to where we are now. There were times when we thought that this fight was never even going to happen. We thought that Ngannou was just going to stick to PFL. We thought PFL wasn't even going to let him do boxing. But I think that was probably written in his contract. I was like, well, if you do this, we'll let you go box Fury for $8 to $10 million, exactly. Which is rumored how much money he's going to be getting, $10 million. And are you okay? Okay. And I think it's nice to see Ngannou get the money that he's going to be getting, because he's been such a big draw, or such a big name in the MMA world. I mean, an arguably great heavyweight, one of the best, beat one of the best, but he's also been beaten by Stipe as well. So I just wanted to see how you felt about this whole Fury and Ngannou fight, because I know you kind of had some opinions on it, but I just kind of wanted to hear about what you think more about it.
Yeah, I like the fact that Ngannou's going to get paid what he probably rightfully deserves, being one of the biggest names in combat sports in general. I would have, as just on a baseline combat sports level, I would have really liked to see Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk fight.
Yeah, I did too.
I was really hoping that they'd find a way to make that one happen, but
how did that end up falling through?
If I remember correctly, I believe it was because Usyk's camp wanted more than 30% of the shared revenue, and Fury's
that's insane.
Camp, which I get it. Tyson Fury is the biggest name in heavyweight boxing, one of the biggest names in combat sports in general. So he deserves to take a majority of that money.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if the Usyk fight wasn't going to happen, then I think like you, Ngannou was the right dude to put in there.
Yeah, and there was a lot of names that were being thrown around in there as far as opponents go, because I wanted Anthony Joshua, and that fight was, lined up for December, last December.
Yes.
But that, I think AJ had to pull out for some reason, and then I think it was Dylan White who stepped in, and then that fight ended up happening, and then that's when Ngannou came in, and was like Mike Tyson special guest referee, 4-ounce gloves in the boxing ring, just a good old fashioned fist fight is what we were going to see, exactly. And it's going to be really exciting. I think they're going to do well on building off of that card too, get some other big names in there. Even though WBC is not going to be sanctioning the fight, it's still going to sell. For sure. But do you think? Look, I think that it's still to this day a very hard thing to get an MMA fighter in a boxing ring with a professional boxer
and have people interested in it.
Right. The thing, I hate to say it, but right now the only person who's actually making it interesting is Jake Paul. He's making it interesting for boxing. For sure. Getting all these MMA guys in there to get their ass kicked, for $3 to $4 million, which doesn't sound like a bad idea to me.
I'd do it.
I would too.
Yeah.
And I'll get to why I think Nate's doing it, because I think that's one of the main reasons why I think Nate is doing it. But are you excited about this Fury Ngannou fight? Do you think it's, because I think what's going to be good is I think it's going to be a good fight, because they put it in the contract. They're like, make this a good fight. Make it a good fight.
Not exhibition.
Yeah. they said, like, basically don't dance around, like, just get in there and just start swinging at each other.
Slugfest.
And I think it said that they had to win. They had to win in, like, dominant fashion, like, in order to win. And I think somebody has to get knocked out in order for that fight to be over.
I agree.
And I think it's going to be hard to watch either guy get knocked out, especially for both of us. But I'm really excited because Tyson Fury, one of the greatest boxers of all time, definitely. I can argue that he's probably one of the best heavyweight boxers of all time.
Oh,
you can put him up there with Tyson, Mike Tyson, all the great heavyweights. But also while on the topic of boxing, August 5th, so that's probably 3 weeks from now, Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz.
Yes.
Now I've been hearing a lot about this fight, but then I haven't. The marketing on both sides, Jake's been doing all of it, obviously, because his Most Valuable Promotions company is backing with the fight. Nate's is too. But Jake said that he was upset with Nate Diaz because of his lack of promotion for fights. Now, one thing that you got to understand with Nate Diaz is that he doesn't give a shit about anything.
Nothing.
Like, he's literally about to go into AT&T. It's in Dallas. So is it in AT&T Stadium?
I'm pretty sure that's where they said they were having it.
I mean, and that's a big. I mean, that holds 60, 70,000 people. I've been there. It's huge. And Jake says that he thinks that they're going to sell out, and he thinks they're going to do 500,000 pay-per-view buys. I don't know if they're going to get 500,000 though. I don't know. It's going to be tough because Chael. I was watching Chael this morning, and he said that the Tommy Fury fight did like 800,000.
Oh wow.
I don't know if that's true at all. Because Jake sometimes fabricates his pay-per-view buys in a way. And so I'm not 100% sure on if that is actually true. But why do you think Nate took this fight?
I think Nate took the fight because, well, for one, you had kind of already mentioned the money. The pay gap is so significant between boxing and MMA. They're not even comparable.
Yeah.
He'll make more money in this fight than he did. I guarantee you this fight, he'll make the same, if not more, than both Conor fights. And then also, too, it's kind of one of those things for Nate where I think he had a realization moment that his time in the UFC was
on his way out.
It was on his way out, and he knew that he became the guy that they threw to the wolves. Yeah. They matched him up with Leon Edwards. They matched him up with Khamzat Chimaev.
They did give him a lot of really, really tough fights.
It's like a lamb going to slaughter.
But to be fair, he could have won that fight against Leon Edwards if his ego didn't get to him, because he had Leon literally stumbling. Like he had him
hurt bad.
But knowing Nate's stylistic fashion, he does his thing, flips him off, point at him, Yeah. And that's why we love Nate Diaz. That's why we continue to watch him year after year. That's why I've been following this guy since 2013, 2014 when the Conor fights were coming around.
Exactly.
He's been one of my most favorite guys to watch, best guys to follow. I mean, he's a fucking veteran. I mean, he's been in the sport for so long. He was on the first season of The Ultimate Fighter.
Yep.
His brother has been in some fucking brawls, GSP. The Diaz brothers are very, I think, overlooked in the MMA community because of Nate's persona and the kind of guy that he is, and he's smoking blunts and open workouts and stuff. Well, who cares? He gets out there and performs, puts on a good show for us fans. I don't care.
Neither one of them have had a boring fight.
Right, exactly, and I still think that before Nate Diaz finally retires from MMA, I think that the Conor trilogy will happen. There's no way in hell Dana White is going to allow that trilogy to actually fall through, knowing that could be the biggest fight in MMA history, one of the biggest trilogies of all time, a true trilogy.
Real trilogy.
A true trilogy. Both guys lost one of them lost by unanimous by submission. Nate lost by unanimous decision. Mm-hmm. So it's a true trilogy, and it's something that definitely has to happen. If I don't see that fight before I die, before the MMA, I'm going to be very upset.
it'll be a great shame to combat sports if that trilogy's not made.
Massive shame.
In one way or another.
Massive shame.
MMA, boxing, like make it happen.
Or have them box each other. I mean, I think that would be fun to have Conor and Nate box each other.
That'd be awesome.
I mean, that would be.
I'd watch.
I'd go to it wherever that'd be a phenomenal fight. The press conferences leading up to it would just. I mean, we saw how they were back in the day with each other,
throwing water bottles.
I mean, making remarks about each other's wives and girlfriends and shit. I mean, there's no fight in combat sports like Nate and Conor. Like, especially there's no fighters like either one of them in there.
That's the thing, is they're both one of a kind guys. You're
exactly.
not going to go find another Nate Diaz or another Conor somewhere.
No.
They're one of one.
And the thing is about finding another Conor McGregor is that we think that it makes you think that will there ever be another Conor McGregor? And one of the things that was brought to my attention the other day is people are starting to compare Israel Adesanya to Conor when it comes to star power.
Right.
Now, I could get behind that. I think right now the only two guys in the company who actually can control who they fight and who they don't fight are Israel Adesanya and Conor McGregor. Conor says, I want this guy. Dana goes, all right, we'll do it. Let me see if he wants to do it. Izzy's like, all right, I want to fight him. Okay, yeah, sure, we'll do that as well. Yeah. So I think if maybe by the time Izzy retires, maybe by the time he's done and it's set in stone, maybe he could have. But I just think the amount of publicity that has been brought to that company because of Conor McGregor is astronomical numbers.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you go look at the highest selling pay-per-views of all time in UFC history. Pretty sure, I mean, Khabib Conor is the first one. It's one of the highest selling pay-per-views of all time.
Yeah. And then the Diaz fight.
The Diaz fight, the Eddie Alvarez fight, the Jose Aldo fight.
Yeah.
I mean, numbers don't lie. Conor is I think he's the most important talent in the UFC.
Agreed.
Obviously, he's not actively fighting. We probably aren't going to see him this year. Sucks to say, but I mean, I think that he may or may not. Could he fight again? Yeah, but he also couldn't.
Right.
I mean, the dude's worth $400 million.
Oh yeah. Easy.
I mean, there's hardly, he has, if he actually cares about legacy and cares about actually fighting, he would have stepped into the pool by now.
Exactly.
And we were talking about this on our group chat on Instagram. We have a group chat with me, Jack, and Hudson on Instagram, and we need to do like a Twitter group chat. Start sending tweets in there.
Yeah, for real.
But Conor's back in Ireland training, and he looks normal.
Yes.
He's deflated. I mean, come on. We know he was on something. We all know it. Everybody
on the sauce.
Everybody knows it. I mean, he had to fix his leg somehow,
right.
So,
right.
I mean, but he looks deflated. I mean, fighters can bash other fighters about taking steroids all they want, but they do it too.
Right.
They just don't want to admit it.
Exactly.
Like, the one guy who I love to admit to talk about it is Chael. When Chael was talking to Ariel about fighting Jon Jones, he goes, "Did you know he was on steroids while you were fighting?" He goes, "Oh heavens, yes."
Yeah.
He goes, he was on more juice than Tropicana.
Oh yeah.
And he goes, this is the best quote. He goes, I know your secret. Mm-hmm. You know why? Because I have the same one. Yeah. So, I mean, fighters doing steroids, everyone, but obviously they can't anymore. It was more lenient back in the day.
For sure.
But Conor had to do something somehow to get healed up. So back to Jake and Nate. So do you think we'll ever see Nate Diaz back in the UFC again?
I think it all depends on how the fight with Jake goes, but ultimately, yes. I think he's gonna come back, and it's gonna be one of those things where if he's guaranteed that third Conor fight, or in some way somehow a title shot. I mean, that's a stretch. That's the farthest stretch imaginable.
That's the most far-fetched idea.
But yeah, I mean, there are definitely some appealing names probably for him to come back. I mean, I know he wanted Masvidal again, and I think both of those dudes would come back if they were to run that fight back. But again, like they're doing the BMF fight, so it's, I mean, things would have to kind of fall perfectly into place, I think, for him to come back and get the fight he wants.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah. And Nate's a massive draw, obviously.
Oh yeah.
I mean, especially for, you know, the real diehard fans like us and the guys who really look into it. You know, he's a massive draw, and he's been in some really high level fights. He's been in there with some really high level dudes. I mean, he's a massive 155 guy. Obviously, he never fights at 155 anymore, but when he did, he was so much bigger than everybody else.
Oh yeah.
But apparently, what's going to go down of the outcome of this fight, if Nate Diaz knocks out Jake Paul, I think that they will move to PFL and have them do an MMA fight there.
More than likely.
Because Jake's got a contract with PFL, and I guess after this fight with Jake and with Nate, if he wins, he'll probably go into PFL or do a rematch with Tommy Fury, maybe because he wants to rematch with Tommy Fury. I would like to see it again,
of course,
because I told everybody before that fight happened, I was like, Tommy's gonna win. I was like, he's a legitimate guy. You know, his brother is the heavyweight champion in the world. Obviously, the kid can fight.
Right, it's in his blood.
I was watching Dave Portnoy and Joe Rogan talk about Tommy Fury, because Dave
Portnoy's watching.
Yeah, and he's like, Tommy Fury is not a boxer, and Joe's like, come on, like he is. He's a legitimate fighter, and they were getting like into a really heated argument about it, and I agree, because I mean, you can't sit there and tell that just because he hasn't been in a WBC sanctioned fight doesn't mean that he's not a real boxer.
Exactly.
I mean, there's hundreds and thousands of pro fighters who don't get recognized who are great fighters.
Exactly.
We probably don't even know their names, and they're that good.
They'll never like fight on a big card, but they're out there.
Oh yeah. Who do you think's going to win this fight between Jake Paul and Nate Diaz? I think we can go ahead and start throwing predictions out, because we're starting to get a little there. I'm a little lopsided, but I wanted to hear what you had to say first.
Yeah, I think it's really, really interesting, because Nate has cardio for days, and he's one of the toughest human beings that God's put on this earth.
Oh, yeah.
So Jake is going to give him his best shots, and Nate's going to roll with the punches, and he's going to keep walking forward and walk him down kind of like a zombie. We always see Nate do that.
Yeah.
As far as a prediction goes, I would lean more towards Jake in terms of the boxing skill.
Yeah, I think I would too.
But if it comes down, if it's a really hard fought, gritty fight that just goes down to the wire, Nate could easily win that fight.
Yeah,
easily.
Yeah, I think you had it nailed good. That's what I was going to say. I think it can go one or two ways. I mean, Nate has got insane cardio. The dude can go 10 rounds, no problem. And it will be 10 rounds, which is, thank goodness. I didn't want to see another 8-round fight. I wanted to see a legitimate boxing fight. And it looks like
they had it originally.
Yeah, it was originally at 8. It was 8 3-minute rounds. Had to be by knockout, but I think they changed the stipulations a little bit to where now it's going to be 10 rounds. And I think whoever, decision, knockout, whatever, winner is winner. I think that's how it's going to go. Which how it should be.
Exactly.
All these other celebrity boxing fights, which call them what you want. They're not really real boxing matches. They're just publicity, getting these guys out there to fight. Like Bryce Hall's doing a bare knuckle. Don't know how the hell that started. I mean, you couldn't pay me to do a fight in there. No way. No way. And Bryce is like, yeah, don't know how this is going to happen, but we're doing it.
Yeah.
So a lot of these YouTubers, and Jake Paul and Logan Paul and KSI, they kind of paved the way for all that. And obviously KSI still fights yearly, and he and Jake Paul won't stop shutting up and won't stop talking to each other. Yeah. So if Jake Paul actually wants to take his fighting career seriously, he won't fight KSI. No. If he actually wants to be a legitimate champion, have a lineage career in boxing, there's no reason for him to go fight KSI if he actually cares about his career. Now, after this fight, say he wins, get him a real guy, get him a real fight, WBC sanctioned fight, get his name in there to start getting him. Because would I like to see Jake Paul become champion? No, I would. I hate the guy as much as it is, but I respect him on the business standpoint and how because he's so good at marketing his fights. He's so good at selling.
Yeah.
So that's what I respect him for. And as far as a fighter, I think he's very skillful. I think he's obviously got talent. But like I said, I need to see a real guy who's got a legitimate boxing background. I've been saying it for years. But until that actually happens, I will never know what kind of fighter he actually is.
Exactly.
I know he's a great boxer. I know he's skillful, but he's fighting guys who don't box.
Yeah,
he's fighting guys
MMA
who do all styles of fighting. If you train just one style of fighting, you're gonna be great at it. That's why most of these boxers are so good.
Exactly.
Because all they train is punching.
Mm-hmm.
Nate's learning to kick, learning to wrestle, elbows, submission moves, and he's learning all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why I think if Jake is secretly training MMA on the side and we haven't seen any footage of it, I mean, we don't know how Jake would do in MMA. I mean, it's like the whole thing when Floyd and Conor, after Floyd and Conor, Conor said, "All right, I lost to you. Now you come over to my game and we'll fight." And that was never going to happen because Floyd knew he would get tied in a knot.
He'd get, one leg kick. He would have been done.
Exactly. That's why these fights, I think, are so kind of, I don't know. I mean, they're fun, obviously. That's why we keep watching them, because they're fun to watch. Yep. But in terms of, is it actually good for boxing? I don't know. I don't think so. Now, I think the Fury and Ngannou fight is going to be good for boxing, because it's obviously Tyson Fury is fighting a legitimate guy. I mean, Ngannou can take punches all damn day.
Exactly.
But I think Fury might but Fury is so fast.
Oh, yeah.
And he's so big. He's 6'9", 280 pounds, and he moves like fucking 225 pounds.
Exactly. He moves like a middleweight.
It's crazy. He's like Cyril Gane.
Really?
And Cyril Gane, who's 265, who moves like a middleweight. I mean, and so that's why Ngannou might have a hard time with Tyson Fury.
I agree, and I kind of think the whole thing with the MMA guys coming over to boxing and vice versa gets a bad rap. Mm-hmm. But I think they could fix that if they started having it both ways.
Yeah.
You say, all right, the MMA guy goes to boxing, they'll box, and then after that, the boxing guy goes to MMA, and you see who beats the other guy in their sport better, like more dominantly, a more clear-cut victory. I think if there was some kind of a guarantee that we could, okay, Jake Paul and Nate Diaz, they're going to box, we know that we'll get an MMA match afterwards. I think so many more people would be interested in that, because they want to see what happens now to set up later. Yeah,
but there's no guarantees in that at all. There's never been guarantees when Jake goes in there and he, there's no guarantees about fighting on the other side, because it's much, much more dangerous. You can actually get seriously hurt if you don't know what you're doing in there.
Exactly.
Mom, is the camera good? Okay, good. All right. Okay. So I'm going to move back into the UFC and finish out there. So another big fight that was announced. This was announced a few weeks ago. It is? Okay, that means it's going. All right. So another fight that was announced very recent, I think it was probably around the same time Ngannou Fury was announced. We finally got Jon Jones and Stipe.
Yes.
Set in stone, November 11th, Madison Square Garden. Potentially Jon Jones' last fight. That's been thrown around. Retirement has been thrown around. He said potentially his last fight. I don't know. I want him versus Sergey Pavlovich.
Yeah.
So bad.
As a purist, that's the fight to make. Yeah,
definitely. I think that is the most important fight, and definitely in Sergey's career, but Jon Jones' career.
It's the most dangerous.
That is so dangerous for him.
So dangerous.
And people who don't know about MMA don't know the kind of guy that Sergey is. Yeah. He's 5-5 inside of 5 minutes.
That's right.
He finishes guys so easily. He makes them drop so easily.
Oh yeah.
And he can knock anybody out. I mean, we saw what he did to Curtis Blades, just decimated in 2 minutes.
I was gonna say it's quick. He picks them apart so quick.
But obviously with Jon Jones, that could never be the case, because he's Jon Jones. He's the greatest fighter of all time. But if Jon wins this fight against Stipe, which I think is going to be a very, very good fight, a lot of people are counting Stipe out. I'm not counting Stipe out. No. Stipe beat Ngannou. Ngannou is the so-called heavyweight GOAT. Right. Stipe's the heavyweight GOAT, in my opinion, as of right now. If Jon Jones keeps on his career in the heavyweight, then he very well could be.
Exactly.
But we don't know. we don't know if that's going to happen.
No.
But I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this Jon Jones and Stipe fight, because this fight should have happened, God,
4 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it was supposed to happen 2 weeks ago, International Fight Week.
Yes.
That was supposed to be the main event. That obviously didn't happen. But originally it was supposed to be in March when he fought Cyril Gane. That
Yes.
didn't happen either. And then it was also supposed to happen in December of the previous year. That didn't happen either. So there were also talks of if this fight was actually going to happen.
Right.
And we got our wish.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
happening.
It's coming.
So I just kind of wanted to get what you. I've been talking way too much. I just kind of want to see what see what you thought about it.
No, yeah, I agree. I think it's the most important fight for Jones so far, and it's going to answer a lot of questions as far as heavyweight lineage across the UFC. I mean, really, I think whoever wins this fight, they kind of get the crown as the UFC's heavyweight GOAT, and that's kind of a done deal. So it's stylistically, it's an interesting matchup because they've both beaten guys like Daniel Cormier. And so it's like you put two guys who beat someone like Cormier in there, it's bound to be exciting.
Oh yeah,
interesting,
definitely. And Stipe has been doing. He hasn't fought. When I don't even remember the last time I saw Stipe fight. Was it
his last fight was against Ngnnou?
Yeah,
when he got knocked out.
The second fight. Yeah, when he got hit by that freight train of a fist. I mean, but there's no other fights announced on that card yet, I believe, on November 11th. Because we thought we were going to get Jon Jones in November, Conor in December. We thought that was going to be the thing.
Right.
That's obviously not going to happen anymore. But do you think if Jon Jones were able to win, do you think that it would be hey, I've done. Like, he's like Tom Brady.
Right.
He's done more than enough in the company.
Exactly.
I mean, he's got the most. I think he has the most he has more title fights in his career than regular fights. He's fought he's fought in title.
He has 17 title fights.
So coming up for this one, it'll be 17.
This will be his 18th.
Yeah, 18. Yeah, and Stipe's the same way.
No, I'm saying this fight.
Oh
against
yeah,
Stipe will be his 18th.
That's absurd.
I mean, that's crazy.
I mean, if that's not your go, I don't know who is.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, Jon Jones, he's won more title fights than Khabib Nurmagomedov has
had total fights in the company.
In the
UFC.
Khabib only fought 13 times, and Jon's won 17 title fights. I mean, it's absurd.
On paper, and obviously watching those two guys, comparing Khabib and Jon Jones is, I like the comparison, I really do, but there's levels in this game. I'll quote Islam Makhachev. There's levels in the game.
For sure.
Jon Jones could have stayed at 205 for the rest of his career and he is obviously the greatest light heavyweight of all time.
Oh, yeah.
He could have stayed in 205 and just continued dominating guys. But he wanted something bigger.
Yeah.
And that's why he took that 3-year bulk, 3-year getting that weight. I mean, that's 50, 60 pounds he had to get up to. I mean, he had to get up. I mean, saying that he walks around at 205 all the time, which we know he doesn't.
Right.
But still, he took those 3 years off, putting on all that weight. And it paid off. We saw what he did. We saw what he did to Cyril Gane.
Easy.
First round submission.
Easy work.
It was, completely easy.
It wasn't even close.
But I think Stipe is obviously going to be a bit more of a challenge because he's so weathered. He's so grounded in the sport, in the division. He's only been a heavyweight. He's so grounded. He knows all the heavyweights. But Jon Jones is the only guy who watches film, as far as I've seen.
Right.
And I've seen no other fighter who actually sits down and watches film on another fighter. It's like he's a football player.
Right.
Did you hear what he said about his brother?
About Chandler?
Yeah.
No.
He said that if Chandler Jones was in the UFC, that he would be the greatest heavyweight ever. Now, obviously, that's just brother respecting brother, but I don't know. We were actually talking about this. A group of my friends were talking about this. We were talking about if some of these like NFL players could actually
turn MMA.
Yeah, to be successful. Now, my one guy who I think could play any sport is LeBron James.
Agreed.
I think LeBron James can play in any sport. Definitely could be a football player. I mean,
100%.
he's built like a football player, but he's a damn shooting guard.
Yes.
I mean, I think, but imagine him. I don't know how much he weighs. I mean,
He's about 240, 250.
Yeah, so saying he's a heavyweight, I mean, get him some training. Get him a couple years of training and then get him a fight, and let's see how that actually works. LeBron has got a massive frame.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's so wide. His shoulders
huge.
are so big. He's got a perfect build to be a fighter.
He does.
I mean, I'm trying to think if I can compare him to as far as physique-wise.
Kind of like Deontay Wilder.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first guy that jumps into my mind. Or Anthony Joshua.
Anthony Joshua, yeah.
Yeah.
Deontay Wilder can hit so fucking hard.
Man, that's what I was hoping. That's circling back to Fury and Ngnnou, I was hoping that we were going to get Wilder and Ngnnou.
I would have loved like a co-main event to like Fury and AJ, co-main event, Wilder and Ngnnou. That would have been probably one of the highest selling boxing pay-per-views ever.
One of, if not
most definitely. But yeah, so Jones and Stipe. I'm glad the fight's actually happening because there was a time where us in the MMA community thought that it was never going to even happen. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to backtrack about 2 weeks ago and talk about UFC 290 International Fight Week.
Oh yeah.
I didn't do a show prior to that, but we can still talk about them now. Still fresh in our minds, obviously.
Oh yeah.
Such a fantastic night for me in a way. I gamble, sports betting just a little bit. Mm-hmm. And before I get into anything, I want to talk about Dricus Du Plessis and Robert Whittaker. Now, obviously, no one was counting out Robert Whittaker going into this fight. Neither was I. I mean, it's Robert Whittaker. He's such a fun. He's fought everybody. One of the best middleweights ever. He's fantastic. But when I really, because it was Saturday morning, and I was on my computer trying to figure out my bets, and I was trying to figure out what to place, and look at the odds for DDP, and it was like plus 320, and I was like, that's too good. It was
great value.
It was way too good for me, so I took it. And all my friends, Jack including, because Jack's the biggest Whittaker fan ever. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Jack. But I was like, listen, he's gonna get in there and he's gonna win. Like, I'm telling you, he's gonna win. Second round knockout. I rewatched it. I rewatched the fight this morning, and the just complete dominance the whole fight, even in the first round.
Yeah,
spectacular. I mean, obviously the first round he was a little slow, couldn't decide which stance he was doing. He was switching up a little bit.
Yeah,
and Whittaker was kind of having fun with him in the first half of the round. In the last half of the round, Du Plessis really started to pick up the pace and turn up the heat.
Exactly.
And he was doing takedowns, and he was doing really stylistic combos, and he's a very unorthodox type of guy. You really can't tell what he's going to do when he gets in there and fights.
Yes, you can't read his patterns very well. I don't even know if he realizes he moves in a way that's like unreadable. Mm-hmm. Like you can't pick up on certain things.
Yeah, and that's why I was a little worried going into this fight against Whittaker. I was like, God, like I know what he likes to do, but Whittaker, I don't know if Whittaker's gonna be ready for something like that.
Yeah.
And I think out of anybody right now in the middleweight division who actually has a chance to beat to beat Israel Adesanya, I think it's Du Plessis. I definitely think so because, going back to yesterday, we all thought, because the fight after that, because obviously Du Plessis went in there, won in the second round knockout. Israel Adesanya was sitting ringside. Then he was like pointing at him, telling him to come in the octagon. Izzy got in the octagon. Very iconic stare down face off in my opinion. Yeah. I mean, it obviously one is the whole who's the real African debate is starting to really heat up.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm from Africa, but you're no brother of mine. Mm-hmm. That whole thing. And but now we were looking at yesterday. We were reading. We were notified that it looks like it's going to be Sean Strickland.
Yes,
that's going to fight Izzy in September due to Du Plessis out with an injury. I don't know which injury that could be. I think he was a little banged up going into the Whittaker fight, but still ended up doing it anyways.
Yeah,
but I think. But that's what's going to happen apparently. But obviously, the winner of that fight, Du Plessis will get will get next. I mean, he's got to get. He just finished Whitaker. He's got to get next.
Yeah, he'll 100% fight for the belt his next fight. I'm just not. It's just interesting. I'm just curious. I'm really, really curious as to what the injury is, just because it's undisclosed. I just want to know what's going on.
I hope it's not his nose again, because he just had that surgery and he was only taking in 8% of oxygen when he was breathing.
That's crazy.
And so that obviously helped him out with his gas tank in terms of fighting. But yeah, Duplessis has really started to grow on me. We've been following him for a while now from doing those main events or the fight night cards, and then he's really he's starting to move into the pay-per-views, and he wants a poster. That's what he said. He goes, I'm jealous that I don't have my own poster, whatever. So and he'll get it one day. I know he will. And he's one of my favorite guys right now. Like, he's a guy that I really like to fight, and I really like to watch fight because he's so damn good.
He is.
So main event, Volk versus Yair. Volk is so damn good.
He is so much better than everybody else in that weight class.
Oh my! I mean, he's just miles better than most guys, than everybody in that division, and that's why it's going to be so hard for him to find a new fight. But Ilia Topuria, book it. I mean, I don't know what they're waiting. Obviously, Volk's going to be out for a little while because he's got that surgery coming up. But still, I mean, that's what's to make. That's what's next. In my opinion. I mean, unless if he wants to, the stupid thing to do. But when you think about it, it will be smart just to vacate 145 and move up to 155. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with Volk as far as who Volk's gonna fight, because you got Brian Ortega, who's still a high-ranked featherweight, Max Holloway, who's still high weight, but he's fought them each. I mean, he's fought Holloway 3 times,
yes,
and then the Ortega fight, which is such a great fight,
amazing fight.
So you get the chance for Volk and Ortega to run it back, or there's, I don't know, but I just wanted to kind of see what you thought about what could be next potentially for Alexander Volkanovski.
Yeah, so I think there's really 3 realistic options for Volkanovski at this point. Option A, fight Ilia Topuria. He just put a beating on Josh Emmett, a 50-42 scorecard.
It was unbelievably. I can't believe that he actually survived all those 3 rounds.
Oh, I can't either. And we never see. I mean, we see 50-45s at times, but a 50-42 scorecard, we never see that.
That's bad.
So Topuria, I think, he's the rightful guy to get in there with Volkanovski right now. Option B for Volkanovski is he says he goes after the rematch with Islam Makhachev, which is also not a bad idea. A lot of people thought he won the fight.
I do.
And, I mean, I know I'd love to see that rematch again. I think the whole entire combat sports community would want to watch that rematch again.
Definitely.
And then option 3, again, like you said, vacate 45, permanently move up to 55, and then he's got options, like I just said, Islam, or maybe he wants to fight the winner of Poirier-Gaethje. I mean, Charles Oliveira.
I think him moving up to 155 is like the last thing that should happen.
It's probably the least desirable outcome.
Yeah. But I think, okay, so after that fight with Yair, where would you rank Volk all time in terms of featherweights? If you saw my Snapchat story that night, I posted and I just said he's the greatest featherweight ever. Now, the one guy that I go back to about this is Jose Aldo.
Yeah.
But Jose's, he's old man Jose now, but he's still, I mean, he's in the Hall of Fame. He was the first ever featherweight champion.
Yeah.
He was the only featherweight champion for 10 fucking years.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy has a extraordinary career, an extraordinary track record. Sucks to see that we never got to see him fight Conor again. I really wanted to see that.
Me too.
But where would you rank Volk in terms of featherweights of all time?
I have 2 perspectives on it, because I think there's who has the greatest accolades, and then who is the best fighter. Like, who's the best dude?
Yeah.
In my opinion, Volkanovski's the best fighter at
absolutely.
145 ever, because he is so complete in all areas.
Everywhere.
He's very, very good. in terms of the accolades, I still think Jose Aldo, because he's got 9 straight title defenses. That's, I mean, what, Volk's at 5 or 6?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and I'm not. That's not to say that Volkanovski's far away. I mean, he's right. I mean, he's nipping on Aldo's heels. If Volk wins another title fight at 145, I think he surpasses Aldo, and I think we can comfortably start calling him.
Say he's the featherweight GOAT.
Have to.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to the co-main, which was 120,000%. One of the best fights I've ever seen with my own 2 eyes, and definitely the best. I didn't have a whole lot because we'll just go off, but Brandon Moreno versus Pantoja. Pantoja's 2-0 now against Moreno. So that's tough for Moreno to try and get back in there and fight him again.
Yeah.
But I had never seen 2 little guys like that absolutely throw down for 25 minutes straight.
Oh, yeah.
From start to finish, that fight delivered the whole time. Both fighters were doing their part and just trading blows and beating the shit out of each other for 25 minutes straight.
Oh, yeah.
Such an extraordinary fight. Both guys were busted up by the end. I honestly, before I wanted to see, at the end, when the bell rang at the end of the 5th round, what was your immediate initial, who do you think won?
My initial reaction was I'm not going to be happy with whoever gets the nod because both guys had such compelling arguments to win the fight. Like Moreno was clearly winning on the feet, and then when Pantoja got it to the ground and in the grappling world, he was clearly winning in those exchanges. When the fight was over, I initially thought this is going to go 48-47.
It was
either way.
I think that's what I had it. I had it 48-47 on verdict.
I was like, this is going to be 3-2 either way. I didn't really see either guy like with a clear 4-1.
Yeah. It was. I think it was tied. I think it was tied at going into the 5th.
I agree.
I think the determinant whoever won that 5th round, I think was who was going to win the fight, and Pantoja just performed admirably in that last round.
Correct.
So Pantoja now is going to be sitting pretty with the championship at flyweight.
Yep.
And that division is overlooked a lot. I'm guilty to say that I'm the same way about it. I mean, just because they're very attractive guys when it comes to fighting. I mean, because they're so fast, they're so quick, they've got power. So as far as Moreno and Pantoja go, what do you think either of them could do next?
I think it's so interesting because flyweight in the UFC is so scarce. I mean, for the last 3.5 years, we've only had Moreno and Davison Figueiredo. I mean, those were the only 2 guys fighting for the belt.
Yeah, those are the only 2 guys. Yeah.
So I think it's a very watered down division, and they need a clear number 1 guy right now. A couple names in flyweight that you could make an argument: Amir Albazi, Kai Kara France.
I love Kai Kara France.
He's awesome.
He's great.
He's awesome. I know Muhammad Makayev. He's a Dagestani guy, and he's been pretty dominant in the UFC.
There's so many of them now.
They're everywhere.
They just spawn out of thin air. There's so many of them.
But yeah, I think as far as Pantoja, he's probably gonna take one of those contenders, let's say like Kara France, Amir Albazi. He's going to take one of those guys for his next fight. I think Moreno, I think he'll hang around 125, but I think so too. I think the best thing that he could do, just go ahead and move up to bantamweight and make sure that you don't ever schedule him in Figueiredo again at bantamweight. Obviously, we don't need to see that anymore.
Nope, not anymore.
But 135, in my opinion, is the most stacked division in the world right now.
I agree.
And you throw Davison Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno in that division.
That makes it very, very interesting.
Because
especially with Aljo moving up after this fight with Sean O'Malley in August, so he could fight. They could fight anybody at 135.
So many good fights.
I agree. I'm with you there. I definitely think Moreno should move on from 125 and move up to 135. He's been in 125 his whole life.
Yeah.
He's had some extraordinary fights, obviously, with the Figueiredo. I mean, 4 times. I mean, but all of those fights were such great fights. So I definitely think that's what he should do. Definitely move on to 135. Get you some really good names. Get him a Sean O'Malley fight or
big names, better guys.
Exactly. So that was definitely fight of the night.
Oh, that is 100% the greatest flyweight fight
ever.
Now,
if that fight was not on the card, this next fight would have definitely gotten fight of the night. Jalen Turner versus Hangman.
Oh yeah, man.
Dan Hooker.
I just got chills.
I rewatched that fight. I rewatched like 3 or 4 fights this morning. That was just a nonstop slugfest.
War.
Dan, and you are like the biggest Dan Hooker accolade I've ever, like on Twitter. You got like a tweet that like went insane.
Blew up, yeah.
Went insane because posting his, okay, so for those of y'all who don't know, Dan Hooker broke his arm in the first or second, very, very early, and finished out the fight. I don't know, because Bo Nickel did the same thing. He broke his hand in the first round.
Oh,
against Val Woodburn.
Wow.
So I don't know. Obviously, that didn't take much because he. Hold on, I actually want to go to that one real quick since I was going to talk about that one really quickly. Bo Nickel is going to be a fucking problem.
He's going to be a champion.
He is. I think right now, in terms of fighters who have got the most hype behind them, Bo Nickel ranks number 1.
100%. 100%.
I mean, I've never seen a guy wrestle like him that's a non-Dagestani/Russian guy.
Exactly.
He is going to be a serious problem as he keeps moving up. I mean, he's what, 5-0 right now?
Yeah.
I mean, and he's only getting more popular. He's only getting more noticeable. So I just wanted to kind of see what you thought about Bo Nickel and that recent fight against Val Woodburn. I mean, obviously the fight was very short. 45, a minute maybe, we'll call it under a minute.
Yeah.
What did you kind of think about that whole fight between? I mean, whatever you want to say about it, we'll keep it brief because it was a very brief fight.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, for what it's worth, there isn't a whole lot.
Is it good? Okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of questions were answered with Bo.
Yeah.
In that, and it's kind of hard to gauge because like none of us knew who Val Woodburn was before the fight.
I didn't.
Because
who's he supposed to fight? Was it Al?
It was Trishawn Gore.
Yeah, Gore. Yeah. That's right.
Trishawn Gore. And that fight fell through, and so they brought Val in, and I had no idea anything about Val.
Val had some guts stepping in that fight on like a week and maybe 2 weeks notice. He stepped in on that fight.
Yep.
So,
but I think we learned that Bo has the capability to take the fight somewhere else if he needs to.
Mm-hmm. That's what I had written down. The guy is notably known for his wrestling abilities.
Right.
But he showed then and there that he's got hands too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, those are some devious he caught him with the hook right here on the temple. I mean, and he dropped. I mean, he didn't even need to follow it with any counterattack. So he just dropped straight to the floor.
Clean, crisp, smooth combinations. It's not like he's going out there swinging wild for the fences.
Uh-huh.
You could tell that he's put in some technical boxing work. And
I loved listening to John Anik call that fight because John Anik goes, "Oh my goodness, Bo Nickel by knockout." Because was not expecting a Bo Nickel knockout.
No chance.
First round submission is what we were all expecting.
Like it always goes.
Exactly. I mean, he was favored. He was a minus like 1,400 odds to win that fight against Val Woodburn.
Did he close as the biggest favorite?
I think so.
That's
he
crazy.
Was like 1250 to 1,500 was in the range of what his odds were.
And I love how he says it's good value. He was like, hammer it. It's great.
Yeah,
value.
It's great. I even tried, and I was like, I'd have to win put $100 down to even win like 30.
Yeah,
just ridiculous odds. But I mean, when you're winning in first round submissions, what else are you gonna do?
Rightfully so.
I mean, but I think for people who don't know who Bo Nickel is, it's time to start looking at him.
They know now for sure. I mean,
definitely.
The guy, I mean, he's dangerous everywhere. Like we've been saying, the wrestling, the submission game, and now we see the hands. The only question that I have left with him is just cardio. And it's not even his own fault that we don't know that. He's just so good at finishing fights in the first round that he doesn't even have to show it.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, sky's the limit for him.
Bo Nickal's going to be a serious problem, and every time he's on a fight card, I will be watching. So yeah, tell me about what you thought about Dan Hooker and Jalen Turner.
That's one of the most amazing fights, 3-round fights that I've ever seen on a pay-per-view card.
Yeah.
I mean, and Dan Hooker, man, like shout out to him because he
unbelievable guy. Man.
He gives us the best fights all the time. I mean, Dustin Poirier, Paul Felder. I mean, you name it. He's been in wars.
That Poirier fight is so good. I love how when Dustin's sitting back, he's like, they're both like,
they're just dead.
How about that, Dan? Huh? Like, because when you put on a good fight. You put on a good fight. Like, when you know that you put on a fight that everybody's going to love and everyone's going to talk about for years.
A classic.
That was a classic. I think that's what this was, what we had with Turner and Hooker.
I agree.
I mean, the kicking in that fight was so unreal. I mean, the question mark kicks and the high leg kicks. I mean, the head kicks. I mean.
Dan broke his face on one of those head kicks that he took.
He broke his orbital. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Orbital.
Oh, I saw the X-ray. It was
nasty.
Nasty.
Just a scratch.
It is a dangerous sport. I mean, I can't believe how these guys can go in there and take the beatings that they do back and back and back and come back and still doing it.
Exactly.
I mean, but that fight. Literally, I have on here. If the Moreno fight wasn't on here, I feel like this would be fight of the night.
Oh, 100%. And part of me kind of feels like Dana did one of those under the table bonuses where he was like,
we're not going to say that we're going to give y'all a bonus, but
here's $50,000.
Here's $50,000.
Exactly.
Because I think Duplessis got a bonus.
I think he had performance of the night.
Yeah. And then fight of the night went to Moreno and Pantoja.
Rightfully so. A 5-round slugfest, but I'm sure Hooker and Turner both got money under the table for that. I mean, they deserve it.
Oh yeah,
for sure,
most definitely. And also shout out to Jalen Turner in that fight too. I mean, for hanging with Dan for 15 minutes.
I mean, unbelievable. I mean, I don't know how he was still standing at multiple times in that fight.
I don't know how either of them were standing in a lot of the time. I mean, that just shows you what toughness and what heart really looks like, especially with the guy like Dan Hooker.
Oh yeah.
I think in terms of having the biggest heart in the game, I think Dan Hooker ranks high in that bracket.
He is right up there.
In terms of guys who will go in there and fight anybody, I think Dan Hooker and Bo Nickel. I think Bo Nickel's going to be on his way to be up there just because he's so damn good.
I think so.
But I like to see what they're going to do with Dan Hooker next. I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with him because he was a little lower ranked. I think he was 11th or 10th maybe, but now he's going to be in the top 10.
Right.
And so he keeps winning. They're going to throw him in a title shot at some point. I mean, I'd love to see them do that.
If he keeps winning.
I mean, 155 is a dangerous division, so I'd like to see what they're going to do with him, in the next year or so. I think you get him a tune-up fight after that, get him a nice, comfortable 3-round fight with somebody, get him a win, and then get him in the top 5, 7 or 8 spot.
I'm with you.
And then get him a shot at Oliveira or Islam, shot at anybody, and he'll do it too. No shit, he'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, he took the Islam fight. He took that fight 2 years ago, and he took it on like a week or maybe a week and a half notice. I mean, that was I think Islam and Rafael dos Anjos were supposed to fight then. Yeah. Either dos Anjos or Dariush. It was one of the two. And he stepped in short notice, no problem. I'll fight the most dangerous guy in this weight class right now.
Yeah.
Sacrifice my ranking. So I think, he deserves the reward for the things he does, man.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to see what they're gonna do with Dan Hooker as his. I mean, because they'll get him a fight first of next year, and whenever he's ready. I mean, he's got 2 broken bones. He's got to heal up. So it could be a year maybe before we see him again. But whoever he's in there with, we know it's gonna be a good
awesome.
show.
And if it does take him a year to heal up, that's fine. Like. Let him take his time because what he just gave us a couple weeks ago, that fight we'll watch that fight for the next year, and it'll still be as good as the first time we saw it.
So the last fight that I have written down on here, it was a prelim fight. It was one of the sad nights for us fans watching Robbie Lawler face Nico Price, but it might have been the last fight, but it went out the way that all of us wanted it to. Yeah. Especially for a guy like Robbie Lawler, a guy who is known for putting on shows, who's putting on some of the best fights ever. Prime example number one, him versus Rory McDonald. Literally one of the best fights I've ever seen. And that fight got him into the Hall of Fame.
100%.
I mean, the ending of that fight, they both get up and they put their hands on their hips and their faces are literally like
caved in.
Yeah, because they hit each other so many times. And they're just like, dude, like, and I watched the Robbie Lawler-Nico Price fight this morning, and obviously it was a very short fight.
Oh, yeah.
So there was a bunch of people over here for the fight, and I had to go run out and get food. And I was like, dude, I'm going to miss the damn Robbie Lawler fight. So Jack was actually with me, and Jack had it playing on his phone.
Oh, yeah.
And Jack goes, Robbie Lawler just had a first-round knockout. And I go, what?
Yeah.
He goes, no way. And I'm like, oh, give me your phone. And he handed it to me, and he's like, Robbie Lawler by now. And I was like, oh my goodness. I mean, when fighters go into their last fight, they're not really expecting to win.
Right.
But Robbie Lawler went in there, and he was just like, I'm going to win.
I'm taking it.
I mean, and he had him in the clinch and caught him with that uppercut.
And
then hit him with that hook, and then he didn't even have to follow with any counterattacks either.
Nico
he just fell down, and he went over, and they were like, no, it's over. And, and then they played that little video for him after the fight, which would make any man cry. If you're a big MMA fan, I mean, I was literally watching, and I was like, damn, like he's really about to retire.
Yeah. Which, by the way, the UFC should do that for
everybody,
every single guy,
everybody.
like legends that retire. Like, it's a shame that Cowboy Cerrone didn't have a video, or Nate didn't have a video, or Nick for that matter. Yeah. I mean, Anderson Silva, like the guys that come in,
well respected guys,
just blood and guts guys,
yeah.
Like Robbie Lawler, man. That tribute video should be a standard set for all of them,
definitely,
because it was such an awesome moment. Like, it was new. We'd never seen that before.
Yeah. We'd never seen, guys who are on their way out win in the fashion that he did.
Right.
Because, Cowboy lost, I think. I don't know. That was so damn long ago.
Mm-hmm.
Cowboy lost on his way out. Nate did.
Nate actually won on his way out.
Oh, yeah.
But
against Tony, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to bring it up, but.
Yeah. It kills me. But, I mean, at the same time, I love Nate, too.
Yeah.
So
it's
it's one of those.
But
here and there.
So Nate went out well, but I mean, just what a career that Robbie Lawler has had. I mean, a former welterweight champion. I mean, a great champion, some of the best fights ever in UFC, and that's the way you want to go out in terms of fighting. And
yeah,
it was really good to see that happen. I'm really happy for Robbie.
Yeah.
What I thought was funny, I was on the treadmill the other day in the gym watching the press conference, and we all know Robbie Lawler hates press conferences.
Yeah,
Big John was like, all right, Robbie, I'm gonna keep this sweet since I know how much you love press conferences, and he was just like,
didn't even flinch.
Didn't even care. I mean, he's the most notable fighter for that night. It's his biggest night in his career, and he's just like, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why we all like Robbie Lawler.
Exactly. That's what makes him.
Yeah. But I mean, just an incredible career, and I hate that we're not going to see him anymore. But from the way that he went out, I mean, there's really nothing else to ask for.
You couldn't have scripted it better.
No, if you're a Robbie Lawler fan, there's really nothing else to ask for.
And I think too, with Robbie, I know for me personally, the first UFC fight that I ever watched was Lawler McDonald 2. And
that's one hell of a fight to watch for your first time around.
Thankful every single day that fight was the first one I saw, because
that's one hell of a fight to get you into UFC.
It's what got me in. I kind of attribute all of my interest in UFC and combat sports in general to Robbie Lawler because of that fight. I mean, I was watching and I was like, I cannot believe it. His lip is split.
Yeah,
his lip is hanging off basically. And I'm like, this dude's yelling and screaming and still punching.
Yeah, it's insane. So last thing, and we'll just go over it briefly since we still have 2 weeks until it happens. But so 291, UFC. It's in Vegas, right?
I believe Salt Lake City.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Utah.
Going back to
Yeah,
Utah?
Utah,
Yeah.
Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
So we got return of the BMF fight. Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje. As far as betting wise, I will not be touching it.
That one
will not be touching it
That
because
one should be pick'em odds.
yeah, I think I like over 4.5 rounds because that fight. There's no way that fight goes under 4. Those guys have got incredible gas tanks, incredible stamina. They'll go for 25 minutes, and they'll be like, "Can we go again after
Right.
that?" I'm so excited to see those two fight again. Those are two of the most exciting, electric guys in the 55 division, and arguably in the company. Period.
Exactly.
I mean, they bring the juice. Everyone was counting out Gaethje against Fitzayev. He came in there and walked Fitzayev down. Had
Pieced him
a
up.
phenomenal performance. Dustin Poirier, never count him out in terms of standing up on the feet. And that fight will be on the feet for 25 minutes.
I agree.
Gaethje has had, I think he's 0 for 1 on takedown attempts in his career. I'm just saying shit. But, I mean, and
He defended his own takedown.
exactly, putting emphasis on the fact that he doesn't go to the ground and wrestle with people.
Exactly.
Now, Poirier can do that if he wants to, and that's why if he wants to bring out wrestling in this fight, that's why I could see it going early.
Yeah.
Because if Poirier wants to wrestle, but if Poirier wants to give us a show and actually wants to stand up for 25 minutes and just box and just slap
Bang.
each other, I think there's a potential that we could see that happen too.
Yeah, I agree. And just on the note of 291 as a whole, the main event is obviously going to be fireworks. Jorge Masvidal better be in that octagon to wrap the BMF belt around whoever wins.
Most definitely.
It would be a tragedy.
Has to be there.
It would be a tragedy if he did not wrap it around the winner of the BMF
Yeah, get
belt.
that done, Dana. We need to.
Has
We
to
need that.
happen.
Really need that.
But I'm almost as excited for the co-main event as I am the main event.
I am more excited for the co-main. I mean, you know how much I love Pereira. So
It's going to be an amazing fight.
and it sucks that it's not for the championship, but winner of that fight is going to get an automatic championship fight against I guess Yuri Prohaska if his shoulder is good.
Yeah.
So most definitely the winner of that fight is going to fight for the 205 strap.
I agree. I think that's a clear number one contender. Whoever wins that fight, they go right into that matchup.
And I'm praying for an Alex Pereira win.
I need an Alex Pereira knockout.
If I get
in my
another
life.
Alex Pereira loss, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't know.
If he knocks,
Because I caught so much shit from all my friends about he and Izzy. Yeah, we're about to wrap this up. With Izzy in the whole Izzy fight, I caught a lot of crap because I was hyping Alex up the whole time.
yeah,
I was like, watch, he's going to do it again. He's going to knock him out again.
yeah,
That trilogy must happen before we all move on from this life. I swear to God, if that fight does not happen, UFC has failed as a business and failed as a company. If 2 trilogies don't happen, Conor and Nate and Pereira and Izzy, 2 amazing backstories. I think honestly the Pereira Izzy story is more interesting than the Conor Nate story.
I agree. I think it's the most compelling storyline.
I mean, he's still up 3-1 on Izzy. I mean, and don't get me wrong, Israel Adesanya, one of the greatest middleweights of all time, arguably the greatest middleweight of all time, but he's got to, do a little bit. I think he's done enough, obviously, but he's still got to keep going. But I don't know. And then obviously you got your guy Tony coming back fighting Bobby Green.
He's got Bobby
That's
on
gonna
that Salt Lake
that's
City
gonna,
card.
That's going to be awesome. And then who else is on that? Kevin Holland, I think, is on that.
Michael Chiesa and Kevin Holland.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be on the main card.
And obviously they replaced Paulo Costa with
Roman. Was it Roman Dolizde
yeah,
or whatever?
I think so, yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but
yeah. So I think they'll do that. They're doing that fight too, and then that's one of the biggest cards of the year in my opinion. I'm so excited to see that.
I'm so pumped for it.
Dude, just such a fun time to be a fight fan right now.
Exactly.
I mean, if you're really into this sport, it's really 2023. No doubt has been the best year for combat sports
Absolutely.
ever.
Hands down.
Every single card back-to-back months has just been an absolute banger. All of them have been good.
After banger.
Even the fight nights have been good. Speaking of fight nights, Rob Font. How about Rob Font stepping in on 2 weeks' notice to fight Corey Sandhagen in Nashville.
Beast. I mean, and that's a great matchup.
That's a great matchup.
It's an amazing matchup.
I mean, and I thought we were going to get. People said that they wanted Adrian Yanez,
which also wouldn't have been.
I wouldn't have been.
Matchup.
Yeah, but I love Rob Font, and I'm looking forward to that on August 5th. I'm going to have 2 screens going on August 5th. I'm going to have the fight night going, then I'm also going to have Jake Paul and Nate Diaz going on that fight as well.
We're going to be going back and forth for sure. And then right after that, I was thinking of 291. After that is Sterling and Sean O'Malley.
Yeah, 292 in Boston.
That's going to be a hell of a fight too.
And Cejudo's obviously out of that card.
Yes,
but I do not like
Cheeto and Pedro Munoz. I believe is the new matchup,
which is fine.
I'll take it.
Yeah, it's fine. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. I mean, we tackled everything, and there's still much, but we still got a couple weeks to do this before I go back to school. But
I did want to ask you one thing while I was on here, though. I heard it on the radio this morning, and I thought it was such an interesting question. But the vacant titles in the women's division, like the 135 straps open. I heard something going around that Ronda Rousey might come back.
I've been hearing that too.
I didn't know if you had some inside scoop on that.
I've heard the same thing as well. I've heard that Ronda might come back at 135. If Vanna White nails that, I'm there. I'm there for that. I mean, I really am. That's Ronda's. In my opinion, she's the second best women's fighter of all time.
I agree.
She paved the way for women's fighting in the UFC.
Yeah.
But I think obviously it's going to be somebody against Juliana Pena.
I think Valentina Shevchenko.
Yeah.
If she whether or not she wins or loses in the Alexa Grasso rematch, which are they doing that?
Yeah,
is that the Mexican Independence Day?
September 16th. Yeah, that's when they're doing that.
And that'll be a good fight. But if regardless of what happens, I would love to see Pena and Shevchenko fight for that vacant title if Ronda's not going to come back.
Pena's going to fight somebody. I know that.
I think she's got to be in
somebody.
there.
It'll be somebody against Juliana Pena. I'm not the biggest fan of her. She kind of gets on my nerves. But
me too.
Whatever. I mean, but so much stuff going on. We capped off a lot, but we still got more. But we'll have to save it for next time. But Hudson, it's always great to have you back. Appreciate you coming back on. Thank you all for watching. We'll be back next week, hopefully. That's always subject to change with my damn schedule. Thanks, Mom, for helping me with the camera today. My mother's Trey was absent today, so my mother decided to step in and help with the camera. She did a fantastic.
Stepped in on short notice.
Yep, did a fantastic job. That's all I've got. Thank y'all so much. Make sure to keep liking, subscribing, watching, sharing, all that stuff that you got to do to get me out there.
Blow us up.
Exactly. We're trying to get Ariel to write me a paycheck.
Exactly.
But yeah, thank y'all so much, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.